Welcome to Star Narratives, the podcast, where we have thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people, weaving in the astrological elements of their natal chart. We go so much deeper than just astrology for astrology's sake. Hi, I'm your host, Natha Campanella, and I teach people how to use the wisdom of astrology as an emotional health toolkit. So today we're talking very loosely about Libra. And, I'm noticing that we're slipping farther and farther away from tons of astrology, and I think that's okay. I think it's interesting to bring in the astrological components. And sometimes we don't need to just center on the astrology. But today we're talking to somebody who has a lot of Libra in his chart. He also has a Pisces moon. And, Libra is about being pleasing and relatable. And Pisces moon always brings a very deep sense of sensitivity. And when he approached me to be a guest, he said that he really wanted to talk about living up to the expectations of others. And learning how to be somebody who really embraces the magic of the inner journey. And I thought that sounded really fascinating. And of course, saw his chart. And of course, there's Libra. And so we talk a lot about what it has been like for him to really stay with that idea that it is important what other people think. And it is also not important. And as always, there's duality. It's never black and white. And that's something that we're all doing in this life journey, is we're discerning when things are appropriate to give our attention to, and when we can just sort of let that shit go. So my guest today is a man named Bill G. He's an author. He is a certified SRT consultant, and SRT stands for Spiritual Response Therapy. He's a speaker, and he's just an all-around really interesting man. And so I'm going to just read a tiny bit from his website, and he does a great job of explaining what he does and what he's about. But for now, SRT is a system of researching the subconscious mind and soul records to quickly find and release discordant, limiting beliefs and replace them with loving, supportive ideas and beliefs. So, yeah, who doesn't want that, right? Anyway, I hope that you enjoy it. As usual, if you hear something astrologically that is interesting to you that you would love to research in your own chart, get in touch with me. And we can do a private reading. And I want to ask for feedback from those of you that listen to this podcast regularly. If you have people, practitioners, people in your life that you have used that have gifts that they are offering to the world right now, send me their name. Or you can send them to the Star Narratives page on the website, because there is a form that you can fill out to be a guest on the podcast. And really what I'm always looking for are people that are bringing gifts into the world, people that are social game changers, and people that are just interesting, that have interesting stories, that have wisdom to share. So by all means, send people my way. And if you are one of those people, send yourself my way. And if there are topics that you would like for me to cover, astrologically or otherwise, I would love to meet your needs. All right, so I think that's it. We do talk about, Bill mentions a tarot card that is called the Hierophant as his card, and I meant to touch in with him on what that meant, but I want to just say it here for anybody that's wondering. The Hierophant in tarot is the one that has a picture of the Pope or somebody that looks like the Pope. And so that shows up when we have very traditional expectations and beliefs and even dogma that we're either desperately trying to hold on to or, trying to live up to those expectations. And so it makes perfect sense when he is talking about it. And just wanted to let you all in on what that card meant. And I think that's it. So let's just jump into the interview. Hi, Bill.
Hi there. How are you?
Good. I am really happy to have you here, and I'm excited to talk about some of what you are doing with your business, with your life. It seems like you have some really interesting things happening, and I don't know that I have talked to anybody that is doing what you're doing. So I thought we could start off, and you can just tell me a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Okay. Well, let's see. I am a spiritual response therapy certified consultant. And what that simply means is that I've had the training through the Spiritual Response Association basic and advanced class, and also an intensive skills class. And they certified me as knowing what I'm doing. So I'm in private practice. I work out of my home mostly, and I see clients uh, throughout the world. I've got clients. I have a client in Pakistan, and I've got another client in England. But I have also people who just come to my house, and we consult the charts, and we clear their programs. So just a little bit of what SRT is. It stands for Spiritual Response Therapy. It was developed by a man named Robert Detzler, who is a unity minister out in Washington State. And what it is, it's a dowsing technique which uses a pendulum and a series of charts developed by Robert to research a client's soul records to figure out what it is that is blocking them, what kind of soul programs they're running, so that way we can clear them and then open them up to a new path. Generally, clients come to see me when they're at a crossroads in their lives. They're not quite sure what direction they're going, what spirit is guiding them to do. And so we research it, and then we come up with a plan.
Wow, that sounds like it could provide quite a bit of relief and maybe even bypass some of the typical time that it takes some of us to do that process using other means.
Absolutely. One of the things that it does, it's kind of, we're all on a soul journey, and we're all learning things, and we're all experiencing life. What Abraham would say, the contrast. We're all living the contrast. And every time that we have the contrast presented to us, we're learning, we're growing. But most of us, as we're living life, we just get caught in the weeds. And we can't see the forest for the trees. There's a lot of stuff going on. Our emotions get in the way. And what SRT does is it cuts right through a lot of that clutter, so that way we can figure out what pattern you are following right now, what soul pattern you're doing right now, and then we clear it, so that way you know what it is. We inform the soul, we educate the soul, we then replace the negative programs with positive ones, so that way you can live your best life.
Wow, that sounds really cool. I was reminded when you used the term being in the weeds of many years of waitressing and bartending, and that was a term that we use for when things were getting really, really stressful. Yeah. And it kind of made me think of when you approached me to do an interview, you said that you have had some stuff in your personal journey that, living up to expectations. And so I'm curious, when it comes to your own personal weeds and the things that you had to sort through and get to, how did some of those things lead you to what you're doing now, and to this really what sounds like a beautiful modality?
Well, what led me to uh, be a practitioner in here was doing a lot of my own work. Now, when somebody decides to become an SRT practitioner, usually it's because they've seen an SRT consultant and they've had some pretty decent results. But to really get the full benefit of SRT, it needs to be done often. Because every time you peel back a layer, you've got to get another one and another one, and another one until you reach down into the very core of your soul. It is a very difficult process. It can be oftentimes a painful process, but at the end, you do come out stronger and more enlightened and more ready for ascension. So when somebody decides that, okay, I'm going to be a practitioner, I'm going to learn how to do this because I've received a few sessions and I want to do this, they seek out a certified teacher and then they teach you. And the purpose of the class that you take, we don't even go into how do you present this for a client. We're training you for professional development here. That doesn't come until later. The basic and advanced class is all about you. It's
Mm.
all about learning how to do the research yourself, to make yourself, to figure out what it is that you need to deal with. And in my own personal journey, um, I had to dig up a lot of my old demons, my old past life programs, and really face them. And yes, I'll be the first to say it's a painful process, but one I would not replace for the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as I'm looking at your astrology chart, your moon is in the sign of Pisces. And as everyone who has listened might have heard me mention before, that Pisces moon is one of the most, if not the most, in my opinion, sensitive moon placements in the zodiac. Um,
Hmm.
it really gives you a connection to really the divine, but we have to learn how to use it, because before we learn how to use it, it ends up sort of looking like I'm feeling everybody's emotions and I'm not aware of it, and I'm very overwhelmed and stressed out. And so, of course, you with your Pisces moon, this is a perfect moon placement for somebody that's doing the kind of work that you're doing. But, tell me a little bit about the sensitivity for you as a young person, and sort of how you, even before you learned this modality, how did you, what were you doing? How were you working with it?
Well, I started out. I learned that I was a sensitive person to this sort of stuff mostly when in my teenage years. And something I didn't tell you earlier is I'm actually an identical twin.
Mm,
My twin brother was born 5 minutes before me, and he is also a very sensitive person. So I
yeah.
spent most of my childhood being a very introverted child, where my brother and I were basically our own playmates. We didn't have many friends. We were, picked on, teased by our peers, and social gatherings were always very difficult for us. In fact, just the other day, I was out walking with my son, and one of my neighbors was having a block party. And she was like, "Hey, come on in, have fun. We got some wine and whatever." And I'm like, No, no, no. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to insult you, but really, I'm a very sensitive person, which makes me an excellent counselor. Here's my card. Give me a call. But I really can't be in a social situation like this because I feel everybody's energy, and really, it's too much.
Oh,
And
yeah.
in career wise, that has gravitated me to being often a loner, avoiding groups. But what's interesting too is I'm a great teacher. I can I can get in front of a group of people. I can get in front of a group of 1,000 people and give a great speech, but put me in a cocktail hour, I am, oh my gosh. Because when I'm speaking in front of a group of people, I'm working from a script or I'm working from a set of talking points, and that feels comfortable for me, and I can pretend that the audience isn't there if I have to.
Yeah.
but but when I'm one-on-one with a group of people, or these small groups and whatever, it's difficult for me. But it's something I struggle with, but it's something that I also work with as best I can.
Yeah, I think that's something that I see in astrology a lot, is that we have these things about us that in certain situations somewhat act as burdens, and in other situations act as these huge gifts.
Hmm.
And of course, then if we're awake and aware, we're trying to balance, and like you said, really knowing yourself, knowing, look, if I come into your cocktail party, I'm going to feel it's not going to
Yeah,
be good for me. You're going to think I'm weird. But
yeah.
if you need
Well,
help, here's my card, because I'm really
yes,
awesome in that capacity.
yeah, and also, um, when I was in social situations growing up, I gravitated toward the theater because I was in choirs and stuff like that, so I have a decent singing voice. So my inclination to getting into parties was, I'll just be the entertainment. And if I'm the entertainment, then no one's talking to me. I'm talking. I am performing at that point.
Yeah, well, it's like you know what is expected of you, which sort of brings me to my next line of questioning. And you had expressed in our emails that you know you have spent your life being quite concerned with living up to the expectations of others.
Yeah.
And as we talked about, you have a lot of Libra in your chart, and Libra is um, Libra likes to um, really show up and be approved of, and be tactful and relatable and relating and pleasing. And so this idea of when you know that you're going to be speaking or singing, you know what is expected of you, and
Right.
otherwise you don't. So tell me a little bit about this expectation thing too.
Uh, it's a it started off, of course, with family, and uh, and it's strange in the sense that your belief, or at least my belief, of what my family expects of me is always a lot worse than my what reality actually is.
Right, what they actually expect.
What they actually expect. Um, so I spent most of my childhood, my 20s and 30s and early 40s, trying to live up to my parents' legacy. I started off my career as a social studies teacher, and when that didn't work out, I went into accounting. And as an accountant, again, it was like nose to the grindstone, and um, no matter how boring the work gets, you just do the job, you show up, and you do the best you can, and hopefully nobody discovers the fraud that you actually think you are. you know,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of self-deprecation in that, trying to live up to others' expectations, because there's a part of you who always believes that you'll never live up to their expectations,
Yeah.
and that's tough, because that leads to depression, that leads to feelings of unworthiness, and these are all inner demons that I've had to, to tackle, and I still do. These are still things that I have to deal with. I was telling you before this podcast that I've recently taken on the responsibilities of the president of the board for the Spiritual Response Association, which is responsible for all of the education for spiritual response therapy throughout the world. and that's a lot of pressure. And it kind of just fell in my lap. It wasn't something I actively sought out, but this is again. Now I'm faced with this demon again, saying, "Okay, here you are. Now what are you going to do about it?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does this particular promotion, we'll call it, does this feel better to you than being a teacher, for example? I mean, I would hope that this is something that sounds actually exciting to you and that you're not.
It is. Actually, I would put it on par with being a teacher, because when actually, no, actually, that's a great question, because when I'm a teacher, I see that as a performance.
Um,
Um, uh, One of the reasons why I'm not teaching anymore is because my supervisor wanted me to do more hands-on type of teaching stuff, group work, that kind of thing. And I was always very uncomfortable doing that, again, because the social thing. I was a whole lot more comfortable just standing in front of the class and giving monologues, teaching history that way, telling great stories and making it interesting. And my students preferred that too, because they saw how uncomfortable I was with doing anything else. And as the president of the board, um, I'm also starting to view it as a kind of a performance, because I have to prepare for meetings, I have to be there, and I have to kind of rise to the occasion. And I'm very good at rising to the occasion. Again, it's a performance thing. And, I'm able to perform now because there's an expectation to myself that I'm going to do a great job. And then, but if I was just an individual contributor and I just was doing the same thing over and over and over again, day after day, um, I have a tendency to get sloppy because I'm not performing anymore. And then, people are like, my supervisor's like, hey, you did a better job on this before, or what's up? And it's like, I don't know, it's just boring, I guess.
yeah.
And so I'm not performing anymore, and so it gets uncomfortable and whatever. So being in this role, though, actually I think suits me quite well, because now all eyes are on me, and I like it when all eyes are on me, um, because then I can rise to the occasion.
Yeah. So it's, what occurs to me is, so this is my experience, and it seems like it is a shared experience with many people that I talk to, is that, we have these places where we get stuck, and these places that feel so hard to us. And in this case, we'll say expectations, the expectations of others. And,
Hmm.
when you are living consciously and you're really dedicated to your own personal work, it's like we clear some of the triggers. We come into a greater awareness of
Right.
our problems and our situations, and we're good. And then the universe kind of throws us like, oh, okay, here's another opportunity for you to work with expectations, Bill. And how are you going to
Right.
do it now? And it seems from what you're saying that, yeah, this is still brings up some of that old stuff. It's
Hmm.
not totally gone. And yet you're more equipped to
Right.
deal with it now.
Yeah. And also, in this role too, I feel like it's more in my wheelhouse because I've spent years working with nonprofits. I understand what nonprofit compliance is all about, and I understand how to do a chart of accounts and whatever, all the business side of it. So when someone says, "Well, what about blah 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 regulation blah blah blah?" I know what they're talking about, and then I can say, "Okay, this is what we're going to do about it." I've already got a plan formulated. Because I already understand the rules and regulations. I don't feel like I can be thrown so easily.
Yeah. So, this sort of reminds me, when I talked to Ellen Atkins, we had some
Hmm.
similarities in that she was also working in numbers for many
Right.
years. And of course, that takes a different part of your brain than the sort of more spiritual side. And so for you, this integration, this being able to use both of those pieces of your brain and your bodies of knowledge.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about how you integrate those things, because you're on the board, you're running numbers, and yet you're still a counselor and a consultant, and
Right.
working with people, and they're sort of spiritual. They're spiritual sides.
Right. Right. Well, one of the things I've learned about just working in various different offices and whatever is that people are emotional creatures, and they are seeking acknowledgement. They're seeking um, uh, validation for themselves. And the numbers are simply there as a tool. Because after I finished with accounting and I moved into compliance, um, I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought here. It's integrating the numbers and integrating the spiritual side of it. It's counseling. It's all counseling. Even if you're sitting down with somebody and explaining to them a spreadsheet, or I just did a contract job at a nonprofit where I was going over their payroll software, and I noticed a problem with how they were deducting health insurance. And um, so discovering a problem, now I'm like, okay, I have to approach the accountant, and I have to approach the CFO, and I have to approach the CEO and explain to them this problem, assure them that it's not their fault and that it's okay, that all we have to do is this and this and this journal entry, and then make it a recurring entry in the accounting system, and everything's going to be okay. Because the first thing people in positions of authority, or even just positions who are just individual contributors in a business, they get so scared that if they do something wrong, or they discover, or somebody else discovers, especially someone from the outside, a consultant discovers that you've been doing something wrong for a very long time, and it's messed up your accounting really badly to the point where you need to make big corrective actions, that their first thought is, oh my God, I'm going to get fired.
Mm-hmm.
And so their first instinct is, I'm going to deny. And if I can't do that, I'm going to make a gazillion excuses and blame it on the dog and blame it on everything, and start complaining about my life and my divorce and my kids and whatever, and make it all about that, and not about, well, why don't we just adjust this and this and this, and you'll be fine. And so when I come in doing these consulting jobs, and even when I'm doing this stuff with the SRA, it's about, okay, people, I understand emotions are running high here. And yeah, I've discovered something here. You've been doing it wrong for about 10 years, and yeah, I'm glad you didn't get audited, because that would have been a problem. But, but, even an audit is not the worst thing in the world that can happen to you, because auditors are people too. They're here to help you get back on track and do it right. And it's not like the big bad accountant is now going to make your life terrible because you did something wrong. You're, as the outside consultant, or as the accountant coming in, or even as the auditor coming in, you're a counselor. You're there to say, okay, I know you guys screwed up, and I know you're sorry, but we're not about being sorry here. We're about making it right.
Yeah.
And does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think that you have obviously, so looking at your chart, you have your South Node in Virgo and your North Node in Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
And the South Node talks about skills that we have, that come easily to us. And Virgo is, of course, that that part of you that is very organized and can be analytical and efficient and factual and detail oriented. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
the North Node is what we want to learn, what we've come in to really explore. And the Pisces energy is about things that are not quite as subjective, but more
Right.
objective. And it seems to me like that is one of your skills, just from listening to you, is that, you're able to harness both sides. And
Right.
so when you're talking to somebody, it's not all just, quote unquote, woo woo, spiritual,
Yeah.
um, that kind
And
of stuff. It's all like you have the ability to say, yes, here are these problems, and I
right.
understand your reaction. And also, let's soften.
Right. And actually, that's how I approach my clients too. When my clients come to me, I don't go into a tremendous amount of woo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, the charts do go into a lot of woo, and so then when things come up, I say, okay, this is what it's saying, but this is what it means to your life here. And I keep trying to bring it back to the practical. This is you are feeling this emotional state because you've got this program recurring in your life. And then the counseling aspect comes in, we talk about it, and so this is what we need to clear, so we clear it when we move on. I actually have a couple of clients who come to me strictly to talk about business. They're not really interested in talking about themselves and their relationships and whatever. They just want to clear the blocks in their business, to make their businesses more successful, and that's fine. I'm more than happy to talk about it. But the one thing I keep reminding them though is, when it's your business, it's all about you. It's because this is your baby. This is a product of your love, and if you've stopped loving it, or it's causing you too much agita, or there's programs within what you're doing which is creating problems in the business, then we need to clear you. We don't necessarily need to clear your business partner or
Yeah.
your vendor, or what. It's not about the competition down the street. It's about how you feel about that competition, and what kind of program are you running, or what was that person to you in a past life that you now feel so compelled to grind them into the pavement. We have to, we explore all that.
Yeah, I mean, that is so fascinating. And I see more and more of this as people like yourself that can straddle both sides like that,
Hmm.
because traditionally, or at least, in the last, during our lifetime, it's like the woo has been on one side, and can be very easily discredited by some of the more sort of
Right.
straightforward scientific. And there is this merging that's happening, and largely in part to practitioners like yourself that can hold both sides and can
Right.
present it like you just said. Great, you can come in for a business clearing and we can really work on your business, and also this is related directly to you, and so
Right.
let's do both here.
Right. Um, and I've got a lot of skeptical family members, and they're like, "What are you doing with your life now? Um, all this woo stuff and whatever." And I mean, you're a talented business person. Why are you barely scraping by trying to build a business out of this? And I, what I tell them is, I mean, you can say whatever you want about this, the woo side of what we do here. What I argue about are the results. When someone comes to see me and they're at a crossroads, whether with their business, their life, or their career, or their relationships, and they come out of it feeling better to the point where they got their stuff together, who cares how we got there? Because
Yeah.
who cares about the journey to get there? We got there, and it worked for them. Now, if we sit down together and we do this and it doesn't work for you, that's fine. There are literally hundreds of other energy healing techniques out there. You can try another one, or none at all, or you can go see your psychiatrist, or you can pop some pills or whatever works for you. If it works for you, it works for you. I'm not going to judge.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that in astrology a lot as the people that are, that say, quote unquote, I don't believe in astrology. And I
Right.
say, it's not a matter of whether astrology as a tool is, right or wrong. It's a languaging. And if I can sit and explain some things in your chart that open up some sort of clarity to you or help you to see a situation and see what's really happening, then I've done my job. And if that doesn't work, then like you said, there are so many other modalities. But I think that for a long time, people were very, if you worked at a job, even if you hated it,
Mm-hmm.
you stayed in a marriage, even if it was uncomfortable, and you
Right.
just sort of did these things because that's what was done. But now people are a little less willing to do that, and people want to feel good, and people want to find contentment. And so, you can have the naysayers, and then, like you said, what is working? What is working for you then? If you think
Right.
the thing isn't working, what is working for you? And I've always, I've had a few readings that I've done with people that were blatantly skeptical before the reading.
Right.
And afterwards, they just said, well, thank you so much. That was really, that really was very eye-opening. And it did exactly what, sort of what you expected it to do, which was just show me how to feel a little bit better.
Right. Right. I have a first time client coming to me next week. I got off the phone with her last night, and she was like, I don't believe in past lives. I don't believe in this sort of thing, but I feel like, I just need to talk to somebody. And I was like, that's fine. That's fine. We can talk, and we'll do some clearings and whatever. And if you feel better, you feel better. And that's great. And we'll make it work. And if it doesn't work, then no harm, no foul. You can move on.
Yeah. So, I mean, what were some of the things that you found in doing SRT on yourself? What were some of the things that you released? Or, if you don't want to get personal, you can talk about sort of generally your clients. What are some of the big things that you help people release that like really make a difference in just the way they're feeling in their lives?
Well, I'll talk more specifically about myself. Uh, a lot of the stuff that I deal with is, again, the expectations of others, but also the sense of self-loathing that I have sometimes. And I think a lot of people have a sense of self-loathing, especially when they feel like they're trying to meet others' expectations. And so, um, uh, in my own journey, I've done past life research, and I found that I'm always a person who's trying to fix things. And I'm generally not very successful at fixing things. I actually end up making things worse in all these hundreds of past lives. I always generally make things worse because I'm always trying to follow some. Um, the Hierophant is my card. That I'm always trying to do things the conventional way. I'm always trying to uh, teach the traditional way, or provide a set curriculum. And once we figure out what curriculum we're going to follow it. Gosh darn it, even if it's not working for you, whatever. So I got to fight that in myself and be more spontaneous, and just not give in to the trappings of society. I mean, one of the things I did when I was younger is I bought a house. I bought a house in 2001, and then in 2010 I had to foreclose on it because there was just no way I could keep up with the payments and whatever. The credit crisis was very unkind to me.
Yeah, that was right at the time when everyone got in with the
Right,
ARM loans, and yeah.
right. And so it was, and so my personal journey was, okay, so now I'm now I'm renting, and I'm still renting. I'm renting a house here in Vermont, which I love very much. But again, it's not mine. It belongs to somebody else, and that's fine. And because discovered that I actually really enjoy my freedom more than I enjoy possessing anything. And so, I mean, my dream in 10, 20 years, I see myself with no house at all. My wife and I living in a camper, going across the country, doing workshops and doing healings and living on, just having an internet-based practice and doing speaking engagements and just not choosing freedom over the trappings of society. And that speaks very much to me because, again, it's about those expectations. You got to get married, you got to have a kid, you got to have a house, you have to own a house, and then you spend your weekends working on said house. And so
Oh yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and it, I never want to ever be in that position again. And it's not that I advise my clients to do that. That's not what I advise my clients to do, because I advise my clients to do whatever the charts come up with. I had a client recently who was um, getting a divorce, and she was very concerned about whether or not she was doing the right thing because there was kids involved, and her husband really didn't do anything wrong. She just felt like she was being strangled in the marriage itself, and the expectation. She was also dealing with expectations and whatever. And what came up on the charts is that she needed just to be free. She needed to be free of all that in order to explore whatever the next thing on her life journey was. And the husband, the house, and all of the responsibilities were strangling her on the inside. They were strangling her soul, and that all came up on the charts.
Wow.
And I said, okay, well, this is what spirit is directing you to do. And she was like, how can you say that with such conviction? And I was like, I'm saying it with conviction because it was on the charts.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because I'm not giving you my personal belief here. I'm giving to you what's on the charts. And sometimes the charts can be ambiguous. Sometimes they can be kind of cryptic. This particular reading was about as clear as daylight. I mean, sometimes sometimes you get a combination of items on the charts that are just totally clear. Like this came up, this came up, this came up. This is as clear as day. There's no things about it. I could say this with absolute certainty. This is what you need to be doing in your life. And then she felt a lot better. She came back for a follow-up, and then after that she's doing much better now. She's embraced that freedom, and she came to the realization that, okay, my kids are okay. My ex-husband still, he's still there. He's still we still have a partnership with the kids and whatever. And now she's free to go to do these retreats, these healing retreats in Mexico. She's able to pursue some of her interests that she wasn't able to do any before, and she's having a blast.
Wow.
So
yeah, sometimes we just need the guidance, the validation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to, I like what you said about, this isn't your conviction. This shows
Right.
up in the charts. And I feel that way about astrology. And
right.
Of course, as you're talking, I'm poring over your chart. And, you said this piece about self-loathing. And in case anybody who's listening is curious about how self-loathing shows up in astrology, it often shows up through Saturn.
Yeah.
And you have a really interesting connection between your sun, which is your sense of self, and Saturn. And then you're talking about this wanting to break convention, and how,
Mm-hmm.
that's been this piece for you of feeling as if you had to follow, and then also knowing that that didn't work for you. And you also have Uranus, which is the planet of, rebellion, slash being progressive, slash being innovative. You have that in a conjunction with your sun. So again, it's like, this is just what the chart says. And I love, out of your very mouth, as you describe your chart to me, like, oh, it's awesome.
Oh,
And
that's
that's,
great.
I think that's one of the real beauties of all of these kind of metaphysical tools.
Right.
Is if we are open and curious about the wisdom that they hold, they can be of huge support.
Yeah. And to get back to the story of that client I had, I told her also, if the charts came back and said, no, you need to get back together with your husband because he's the love of your life, and and you guys have a lot, your journey, you have a much larger journey ahead of you, I would have said that too.
Yeah.
I'm not here to validate your choices. I'm here to present to you what your soul records are saying about who you are and what your journey is.
Wow. So this is sort of just my curiosity, but with a twin brother, is he having similar? And I always see this with twin charts, is that while twins have the same astrology chart, oftentimes they're on completely different life paths and they're doing different things. But I'm curious whether your brother has also made his way into more of the, spiritual side of things also.
Yes and no. He actually chose a more orthodox lifestyle. He is a building inspector back down in New Jersey. He married a born again Christian, and so they are very heavily involved with their church. They have 3 sons and a daughter, and they all went to religious school. Their eldest son just graduated from a Bible college, so they're all into the ministry that they do. And another thing that they are really in, he was more into the theater than I was. And that's a kind of a running joke in the family too, is we were both into theater, but he got all the lead roles because he was slightly better than I was. And we tried the twin thing in New York for a little bit, doing commercials and whatever. That was kind of fun when we were teenagers, but
that's so cool. I mean, it's like
yes.
he's doing his Pisces North Node in the exploration of spirituality, just in a very different format, and yet there's still similarities.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, there is.
Wow. That is just, I love this stuff.
Yeah. And he too breaks convention, especially with my family a lot of times, because my family are Lutheran. And so when he went born again, that was quite a coup in the family, because that was considered going to crazy town. And then when I broke with Lutheranism to become a Unitarian for a little while, and then I stopped going to church altogether and pursued more esoteric studies, that didn't go over very well with the family either.
Yeah, isn't that funny? It's like
Yes.
the different ways that we rebel, and yet if we're listening, we're sort of doing what is in alignment with our soul purpose.
Right.
So, wow. Well, this has been really fascinating to talk to you, Bill. And so I'm curious, how can people find you? How can they work with you? And I know also that you are, you have a podcast of your own. So do you want to share a little bit about that and sort of tell us how to find you?
Okay. Well, I do a podcast. Actually, I'm a co-host on a podcast. It's called LOA Today, which is Law of Attraction Today, with Walt Thiessen. There, you can just find that on YouTube, and you can also find that just regular podcast search. He broadcasts every day, and I'm on the Tuesday morning show. And on the Tuesday morning show, we talk about SRT and then also how to integrate SRT with the law of attraction. And you can find me also on Facebook. The business that I run with my wife is called Vital Bioenergetics, and our website is ninagee.com. That's NINAGEE.com. There's a link on there for me, so you can read a little bit more about me and how to contact me. Best way to contact me is either through, for an initial contact, best way to contact me is through Messenger on Facebook, or you can send me a text or send me an email. My email is bill@ninagee.com. And I have 2 books available on Amazon. My first book is called Conscious Conduit, A User's Guide to Ascension. And my second book is Spirit Path Book of Days, Volume 1. And I'm working on Volume 2 as we speak, which is a collection of my weekly blogs, which I also do every week.
Cool. So it sounds like there are so many ways that people can familiarize themselves with your work. And
Yes.
I'll put all of these, everything that you just mentioned, in the show notes for anybody that didn't have a pen handy.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead.
Oh, and I see clients. I can do FaceTime. I can do Zoom. I can do Skype. For if you don't live in the Rutland, Vermont area. But if you do live in the Rutland, Vermont area, by all means, stop on by, and I'll be happy to do a one-on-one with you.
I am so grateful for technology. I have found some of the best practitioners that live nowhere close to me, and to be able to access. That's one thing I love about this podcast is, bringing all these people together so that people that are really resonating with what you say, and for anybody listening, go on Bill's site, because I was poring over everything on your site, and everything that you do is explained so beautifully, and it just like, yes, I want relief from that. Oh yes, I want to clear these blocks. And so definitely suggest, if this work sounds interesting, to do some exploration of your work, Bill, and find you.
Yeah, and my wife does great work too. Not to minimize my wife's role in here too. She's an acupuncturist, a shamanic healer, and a intuitive empath. So she does a lot of excellent work too.
Oh yeah. Well, hi Nina. Hello to you. And you guys can find her on the same site. So
that's right.
Well, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure.
Oh, it was my pleasure. This was wonderful. Thank you.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, Bill.
All right. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for being here with me and listening. If you are interested in helping me, leave a review. You can leave us a star review, you can leave us a word review, but the reviews really help get the episodes and the podcast in general seen by more people. And if you want to ask me questions, give me feedback, if you have show ideas, or if you're interested in coming on the show, you can find me on my website, nathacampanella.com, or find me on Instagram at Natha_Campanella_astrology. Oh, and recommend this podcast to friends that you think might like it too. All right.